Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our second show of Reinforcement with Vic Williams. Today, I have as a sidekick and guest to keep the flow going is my good friend that's helping us set this whole thing up is Alexa Oliva from BOA Studios.
He says it like that because for years he couldn't get it right.
Bow
At
wow.
least you always got Alexa right.
Bow wow. Who's Bow Wow? Anyway, well, no, we really want to thank you guys. And Alexa, thank you for joining us again today. And we thought we'll take the show to further understand what we're doing here is, we're strictly about human trafficking and trying to educate and bring awareness. The first show was really explaining who I was, letting you guys talk about what BOA does and all the different things that you guys can do. And today, we're going to just go through my PowerPoint so we can understand what the culture, because I come at it from a culture perspective so that we understand, because it's part of our lives and how, some of our actions are part of the problem. So if you guys are ready, we'll get started with Reinforcement with Vic Williams and my co-host, Alexa Oliva. Here we go. First slide. It happens everywhere. There's no place in the world human trafficking doesn't happen. So the topics today that we're going to discuss is commercially sexually exploited children, better known as CSEC, definition of human trafficking that we covered in our first show. Just going to talk about a couple extra things. We're going to talk about statistics, risk factors, warning signs, where it occurs, the difference between human smuggling and human trafficking, the culture issues, and general indicators. How you feel about all that?
I feel like that's all important stuff people need to know.
Now, this first slide is very important. Commercially sexually exploited children. I want you all to look at these stories. These are all true stories that are really happening to these kids. And I know your kids are older, but I know somewhere in the audience, someone has kids under the age of 18. But if you don't, I'm pretty sure at least some of us have kids that we know that are under the age of 18 that we love. So I want you to take one of these stories, close your eyes, and then imagine that child that you love. This situation is happening to them. What are your thoughts? What are your feelings? What do you want your community to know about human trafficking? What do you want the police to know about human trafficking? And what would you want your government to do to protect you from human trafficking? This is, every time I've done this, some people can't close their eyes. If you try to do this and imagine one of your kids there, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts are, how do I stop it? What can I do to prevent it? What about all the children in my community? And that's exactly how we met.
Yeah.
Because you told us about this in a meeting at Miami Beach Chamber of Commerce. And I was like, what? That happens here?
Yeah. So if you guys see this, do that, because whatever those feelings are in real life, it's 10 times worse. So it's very important that we get ahead of this and understand what's happening. Again, we talked about the definition of human trafficking in our first show. So just a quick reminder, when we talk about these things, the three most important words are force, fraud, and coercion. These are the elements to have a human trafficking situation. You need one of those three, unless you're under the age of 18. And if you're under the age of 18, you are a victim. I don't need to prove any of these elements. You are a victim, hands down. So for some of these states that are still arresting kids for prostitution, it does not exist. The new law, the TVPA, the Trafficking Victims Protection Act, the TVPA of 2000, made it law that made children under the age of 18 this is happening to.
Is this
victims
nationwide?
Nationwide.
All right.
Because it's just our laws. When the United Nations addressed all countries to address this, we hope that other countries have those same, and most do, that are, especially the tier 1 countries, they get it. But then again, this is about culture. And again, if you're a tier 3 country, you're probably part of the problem, no doubt. So there are 4 types of trafficking. We have labor trafficking, we have sexual exploitation, we have debt bondage, and we have organ removals. Again, we don't see a lot of organ removals in the U.S., but we know it does exist. So when you're traveling abroad, you want to be careful. When we look at some of the statistics, when you see the maps, 21 million people victim of forced labor. That's why I tell people, we're all part of the problem. That forced labor in all those areas are victims making our clothes, sending food, chocolates, all that stuff that we're buying. And all these people are victims. That's why I say, even myself, knowing what I think I know, we're all part of the problem until we make these smart decisions when we purchase stuff.
But as consumers, how do we know that we're part of that problem? And every time I've shared this with people, they're like, but how do we exactly know where our stuff is coming from? A lot of times we don't know. We're just taking it off the shelf in some store,
right,
and we don't actually know. So how do we correct something like that?
If I knew you were going to ask me that, I would have a very good, definite answer. But I can tell you, if we go to, you can Google fair trade. And usually, like when we talk about the chocolate, and I ask, hey, who likes chocolate? Everybody raise their hands. When you saw your last chocolate bar, did you see the fair trade label on it? No, probably not fair trade. Probably coming from the west coast of Africa with the stolen kids picking a cocoa bean to make that product. So imagine everywhere we go, we do a little research. Hey, I like that dress. Who made it? Who's, go one step further. Where is it being made, and are they being treated properly? And it goes back to what your CSR, what did you call that?
Corporate social responsibility.
It goes back to that. We have to hold them accountable, because if not, they'll sell us whatever. Vic Williams going into a restaurant complaining that the shrimp is from somewhere from trafficking is not going to stop that manager. But if the community comes, maybe we can get some things done.
But that's the part that culturally in our country, people are missing. It's that sense of community. It's that sense of sharing. It's that sense of having conversations.
No doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's awareness. And that's what we're here. Once you're aware, now what do you do? I know that's normally my
that's why reinforcement is here.
That's usually my last question I ask people. Let's go back. So when I first started this, there was, and I don't really like doing statistics unless I really know, because sometimes when we get into this world or different worlds and we hear somebody go, oh, the youngest age is 12, we kind of like, okay, and everybody starts saying it. But then when we look back and say, where are we really getting these statistics? So I'll use these statistics. I know the 150 billion a year industry is pretty much, what everybody, the really experts that does this stuff are saying. Because when I started years ago, it was 32. You ever remember hearing 32 billion?
Yes, absolutely.
I knew that number was off. It was just, and I honestly believe that this is the number one crime in the world already. Some experts predict that it would be the number one crime, which is with drugs they claim is the number one crime. But when you have people buying products that they don't know, everybody in the world is responsible. You can't tell me it's not the number one crime in the world.
It's also probably, I remember you shared a book with us in the task force meeting, and it was about gangs.
Oh, yeah.
I know you asked me I cannot find it, but I remember reading it. And entry point for it is the cost of a yucky hotel room. So what, $100 to get in there? That's it. That's all it costs you to open up a business doing this stuff. That's why it's the number one crime in the world.
Well, yeah, and I think, again, this show is all about the culture that feeds it, because we're all affected by it. We make so many decisions based on our cultural beliefs, and we don't even realize it's just stuff that we believe because it's been told to us.
Yeah.
If we did research on a lot of the things that were told to us, we're like, that ain't true, you know? But that's not where we are. But yes, $150 billion a year globally industry, I think is the number one crime in the world. When we look at some of the factors of human trafficking, when we look at recent migration, relocation, that's dealing a lot with labor trafficking, people brought here from different countries. And I would say this, the majority of people or victims that I've come across and that I believe that are sexual victims of this, they're from the United States. But when we look at labor trafficking is people, most of those are people from another country, because once they get here, now that trafficker is like, oh, if you don't do what I tell you to do, I'm gonna call Homeland Security on you. I'm gonna, they take your passport, so you don't have it, which is illegal, by the way. No one can take your documents. It is illegal for someone to take your documents and claim, oh, I'm holding them because I'm responsible for you. That is not true. So we need to know these things. Substance use. A lot of victims, especially on the sexual side, whether they took drugs prior, a lot of the substance issue comes after. Two ways. Either the the trafficker is giving it to you because he know he's going to be able to control you later, or you start taking them because every episode of sex that you have is really rape. How do you deal with that? You
numb yourself.
You numb yourself. And so you take drugs to just escape the reality. Runaway, homeless. We see that children are kind of like leading the way in homelessness right now. Where do they go? Who's looking out for them? Mental health concerns. That is huge, because that's what this is all about. And when we, later on in these shows, we're going to start talking about trauma from a really educated, deep sense. That's all mental. And all that stuff started at home.
A lot of times people ask me, well, or comment, and they say, well, I protect my kids. I don't let them go anywhere. I know exactly where they're at. I track them. And that would never happen to me because I got my kids on lockdown, you know? And they don't understand that these traffickers can also get community kids.
Yeah.
And so they don't understand that perspective, that you can be trafficked and still live at home.
Yeah. And I'm great that you bring that up, because for a long time, Fort Lauderdale was the only city that narrowed down their trafficking cases, knowing exactly what part of Fort Lauderdale a child came from, what demographic they live and whatnot. But the one thing that always stuck out is that whatever that number was, 80 to 90% of those kids that were trafficked, no matter what it was, 150, 80 to 90% of those kids were community kids. That means kids, your kids.
Yeah.
The kids that are not stuck. When you look at that next level, involved in the child welfare system, your kid's not involved in that, but your kid can still be trafficked. And like you said, living at home. Oh my goodness, there's so many stories. And we're going to be talking about different stories, but I want everybody to know, I don't need another story to know that this is horrible. And we're dragging our feet on really trying to understand this, It is, again, the number one crime in the world. But this note that I added when I put this together, where we really got to understand, unresolved trauma leads to vulnerability, and traffickers are masters at exploiting vulnerabilities. That's what this is all about. And all of that is built in culture. Because we have to ask ourselves, what happened to that human being to treat another human being that way? The trafficker and the victim are all pretty much coming from that same family. And, the trauma that they've experienced, it takes you this way or take you that way.
And history shows us that victims later on, if not corrected and not healed, become victimizers.
Yes. What's that old saying? Hurt people hurt people?
Yeah, unfortunately.
That is true. When we look at some of the warning signs, and I want to thank Alexa. She really did a good job on making my PowerPoint look fancy. Like, it's a little great. So some of the warning signs, under the age of 18 providing commercial sex. That's a give me. Clothing is inappropriate, sexual or inappropriate for weather. I mean, we've seen TV and all this stuff. Like you just know what's happening.
Yeah, there. I mean, no girl is gonna wear short shorts in 20-degree weather.
Oh, they're wearing less than that. They're wearing like their,
Miami Beach bikini G-string.
Like like it's 20 below.
Yeah.
And I mean, some of these things are obvious, but we really need to pay attention to these details. One particular thing, especially if you're in a service providing business and you're talking to someone, trying to get information, but their partner has all the information, not giving them a chance to talk. I like this one because law enforcement needs to understand this. Like when they pull people over and they ask the driver for the driver's license and they may want to ID the people in the car, whether they have the right to do that or not, it doesn't matter. But when you ask for ID and the driver got everybody's ID, or you're talking to, hey, how you doing today? And they don't give you eye contact and you can see the fear, you can see something is wrong. Automatically your gut feeling like, this don't look right. They need to investigate more. It may not just be a car full of people who can't speak the language. You could have a car full of trafficking victims. And there's been some good cases. When I worked in Georgia, there's a couple cases of a canine guy who pulled over a car. And because of his human trafficking training, he was able to spot this situation and was able to save a young girl who was being trafficked and being taken away and get her back to her family. I mean, there's so many stories on a daily basis, because this is daily. This is happening every day somewhere in America. This is happening to someone. So you guys out there, you're going to have access to this video, really look at these things in details, because we want you to really understand what this is about. This is a heat map. This heat map was provided to us by Polaris, who is a... Polaris Project runs the national hotline. That national hotline number, 888-3737-888, is the national hotline run by Polaris. But when you look at this map, there's not a state that's not touched by this.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I've learned in throughout the years in doing research about human trafficking is that the hot places generally are the arteries of our country, which are our highways, and that's how they can be moved from one place to another. So arteries run throughout the entire country, and that's why this heat map is like that.
Yeah, that's a good point. And you can see along the lines all our major highways, and the ones that are going from east to west, you can see the spots where it's taking you west, where it's lined up with trafficking issues. And I always love this. Where does it occur? Like people go to strip clubs and they think, I've had these conversations with friends many a times. The girls in there want to be that. And I want to say on the show, this is not a judgment zone. We're not judging people. We live in a world where people are being forced to do things they don't want to do. If somebody wants to go, go do you. I can't tell you how to survive. This is not judging. I live in that world where people are not able to make those. That's what this is all about. How do we recognize them? How do we get these people out of that situation? The more that we know, the more that we are aware, can not only help others, it can protect our families. We can educate our kids what to look out for,
But some people are like, you know what, I don't have any children, or I don't have any family that's going to put themselves in a predicament like that. However, they're living in a community where people are being affected. And the more victims we have in a community, it affects your taxes, it affects the safety of that community, it affects the energy, that probably brought you into that community will be affected.
Today is September 7th. A few days ago, and you guys can reference the dates. You heard about the woman that was jogging and was kidnapped.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, this woman is out for a jog. And I got friends, female friends, that jog early in the morning every day. And once I heard this, I know it was always a concern. My friends kind of jog in a group. This lady was jogging by herself and got murdered. She was kidnapped, taken, and murdered. It's not a human trafficking
and they
case.
haven't found her.
Oh no, they found her.
Oh, they finally found her
yesterday. Yeah.
Oh, yesterday. I didn't hear about it because I know he went to court and he definitely was seen in camera and everything, but they hadn't found her, and he just shoved her while she was jogging, shoved her into the passenger's seat of the car.
Yeah, and they found her today. I bring that point up just to say, look, nobody's safe. She's jogging, a mother of two. I mean, doing what she loved, and she gets killed because I don't know anything about this dude, but it's not a human trafficking situation. It could have turned into something like that. But the point is, it's just we have to be really aware of our surroundings. We have to know, and we may have to change some things because you just never know. You shouldn't be jogging in dark areas. Make it where people can see if something happens, But anyway, I just brought that up just to make a point that this can happen to anyone.
At any moment. All it takes is a few seconds.
I mean, there's just so much stuff. But someone talk about travel agencies. How to travel? Well, if I'm a trafficker and I'm only selling to certain people because I know what I got planned for them on the other side, make sure everything is checked out. Catinas is more like a Latin word for bars, a Latin bar. Massage parlors, we don't have to go into details, but when you have people as rich as the owner of the Patriots football team get caught and arrested in a massage parlor, hey, what I'm saying, that's culture. This guy's the richest, one of the richest people around in the world. What made him feel like it was okay for him to go do that? Culture, right?
Yes.
Because that's ridiculous. I'm rich. Why am I leaving my house? I can have people come in. But he got caught up in that. Because maybe somebody like, yo, you go over there, they'll take care of you. I'm just saying, it's happening everywhere.
I remember one time, my husband's an international speaker and we travel a lot, and I was sharing at a conference, since sometimes I most of the time I go with him, and they know that I run the nonprofit motivational missions, and so they asked us, can you do the presentation on human trafficking? I said, absolutely. And I did the presentation on it, and we were in New Jersey, and it was about girls that braid hair for 17 hours as human trafficking victims.
Yeah.
And they were out of East Orange, New Jersey. Guess where we were at that moment? They're like, hey, you are in East Orange, New Jersey. You're telling us that's happening here? And I'm like, absolutely, that's happening right here.
I mean, hair salons, nail salons. I've gotten reports, and I'll admit, I go get pedicures, manicures every now and then. I don't want to start cutting up my sheets. So I have to do this, right? But I try to make it a point to connect with them. Because you look at the people that are doing, most of them are Asian, but I've even got word about some Brazilian spots. I got a call one day. There's a woman there. She is being forced to do that. And when she said something, they sent her pictures of her family being brutally beaten to keep her in place. I forward that information. I don't know what happened because, when you're not in law enforcement, you don't get to deal with investigations. But this is right here in Fort Lauderdale area. You got massage parlors everywhere.
Everywhere. Well, another reason that we are so popular amongst traffickers here in Florida is because of our weather and because we have a lot of sports events and facilities here.
Oh, yeah.
And sports facilities call on men, and men gather, and men think that their needs should be taken care of when they come. Yeah. And that's why it's a danger zone within, the top, 2, 3, whatever, exactly. And, amongst this.
Yeah, Florida is lovely, but it's lovely for some bad reasons, Yeah. So when we look at strip clubs, we already had that conversation. Male order brides, obviously commercially fronted brothels, international matchmaking. These are just a few of where it occurs. It can occur anywhere.
Yeah.
So, but one thing I want to point out on this page, when I used to travel around the world, all over, educating people about this, we used to have this site that you can go to called Backpage. It was shut down. And the reason Backpage was shut down because it was an American company. And with the new laws that came out, it says, hey, if you're going to have a program that you can people can put their stuff on there, we're going to hold you responsible if people are selling kids. So they shut it down. So when you look at this Skip the Games, Mega Personals, Escort Alligator, I don't care where you are in the world. If someone says, we don't have that problem here, plug in any three of these sites, plug in your city, and just look at the girls for sale in your area. I challenge anybody. I went to Vietnam back when Backpage, and I was training law enforcement in Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City. And I was asked, hey, you guys ever heard of Backpage? No. They pull up Backpage and they were shocked. They said, what? They were right there, like all these women that people can come online and buy right offline.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
Zero idea until I went to one of the task force that you were hosting, and I was like, wow.
I want to tell a lot of, even when I tell people about this, I'm like, go check it out for yourself. Oh no, you ain't going to catch me in an investigation. We're not.
Yeah, we're scared to like even type that on their computers.
We're not looking for people, that are signing on. We're looking for people that are victims. And if you just happen to be a person that's bought a victim, at the same time they're doing an investigation and rescuing that victim, and you just happen to be in the room, you could probably be charged for human trafficking. No doubt if they're under the age of 18, you're going to get charged for human trafficking. So look at, people, check out these sites. Do it for yourself. Check out what's going on in your city. And the only reason why these sites can live in the United States is because they're foreign registered. If they were American companies, they would be shut down. But because they're from other countries, you can sign up to anything from anywhere. They're allowed to exist. Really want to make this quick distinction between smuggling and trafficking. I love it. Every time we hear on the news, in Texas,
they
this
found
truck was in the back of a truck,
yep.
Human trafficking. I'm like, well, we don't have enough information yet. Were these people coming in and were going to be free to let go? Or were they coming in and exploited? If they were going to be free and let go, it's trafficking. I mean, it's smuggling. If they were going to be exploited in any kind of way, then we have trafficking. Very easy. Most of you people that are listening to this, you're going to be smarter than the people on the news because you're going to instantly be able to pick up what the difference is. Smuggling is a crime against the border. Trafficking is a crime against the person. Now, we're about to get into the real culture stuff. When you see that picture, what do you think initially? It might not be good to ask you because you know where we're going with this.
Yeah, I mean, the first time that I looked at that before I knew exactly what it was, I'm like, oh, she's like in a gang or something.
Right.
And, she chose to do that to herself.
When I saw this, it was on Facebook. That was even before Instagram, I think. And they were just, oh, she's stupid. She's ignorant. She's never going to have a life. What is wrong with her? And I just asked, anyone consider her a human trafficking victim? Then I didn't hear it. Nobody responded. They probably didn't even know, what is he talking about? But nobody responded. We did find out later that this young lady was a trafficking victim. But at the end of the day, if you saw this on someone and they really love themselves, do I really have to remind myself that I'm loyal to myself? I have to put it on my face? It's obvious, right? In this world. But if you're just reacting from what you see, yeah, you're going to say all those horrible things, thinking that she's in fully control of her life and put that on her face. Tattooing and branding is it's one of those things that traffickers do. They brand their victims.
Because it's just inventory to them.
You're just a commodity, right?
That's it.
I'm just here to sell you.
And the tattoos, now they get smarter. They're behind the hair, they're inside the lip, or they can be in the eyelid or on the toes. Somewhere they have evidence of being marked.
Yeah, and it's branding. And one good thing about some of the work that we've done here with the South Florida Human Trafficking Task Force, when we establish it and bring, and ladies and gentlemen, when you see this stuff, if you want to get involved, reach out to your local human trafficking, coalitions or task force, because they can always use the extra help in organizing events, educating people. So we have to get out and get involved so that we understand. But this and this is really again about culture. So this next slide is really going to be funny in a weird way, because we put this stuff in our movies. We make it okay for people to do some of the things that they do. So here we go. Let's see if we can get it to play.
I'm looking for this danghead who took my women. He's being liar to me. I want my...
Okay, next slide. Oop. Oh, dang. We'll stop right there. I gave it away. I didn't want to go that far. I wanted to stop because there's some bad language. He goes, where are my bees? I want my bees back. I'm trying to be sensitive just in case somebody want to show this to their kids. This is a Tom Hanks movie years ago called Bachelor Party, right? So I'll be honest. I've been to bachelor parties before I was, pre-human trafficking Vic, went to bachelor parties. I've seen women there. I've seen people offer, things. Post-human trafficking Vic, don't go to bachelor parties where there are girls coming in later. It's a choice I make for myself. I ain't judging what people are doing, do you? But I'm making that choice that I'm not gonna support that. And it's happened. I had friends, had the bachelor party. As soon as the doors opened and the girls came in, I exit out because I have to be real this is my passion. I care about this stuff, and I have to be able to live my truth.
Be authentic.
That's it, So yeah, I made some choices in my life. I debate with my friends all the time. What's this? What's that? But you know what? I ain't telling people what to do. Again, this is not about judging people. This is about making aware of certain things. And the more that I'm educated on this stuff, it's changed my life completely. In a lot of ways.
Mine too. I mean, if it wasn't for you, Vic, and coming into that chamber that day, who knows what could have happened to my children. And they took it serious because we became active in preventing and making people aware. So today I know that my children's spidey senses have been elevated because of you.
Well, good. When people do work, they always want to see the fruits of their labor. If one person got it and did something like you guys have done, I feel like I've made progress, right?
Yeah.
Any progress is better than no progress. Now, I kind of gave this next slide away, but I normally like to ask when I'm doing this live, how many people have ever dressed up as a prostitute or pimp for Halloween or attended a pimps and hoe party? I'm raising my hand. Okay,
I didn't attend, but I saw one in Vegas one time.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know.
Bert? Okay. Bert's like, I ain't going to answer that. Well, anyway. Oh, what happened? Oh, I'm sorry. Here we go. Well, this is your boy, Vic Williams, pre-human trafficking
Yeah.
Vic. That was my costume for years. I was the pimp. I was like, oh, I got dental. I got medical. Funny stuff, but ignorant. I'm promoting this stuff. I'm glamorizing. It's cool. It's ignorant. It's stupid. I didn't have anybody at that time that I know that was personal to me that was being trafficked out or anything like that. But once I started learning that I'm waving this flag, I burned it. I ain't even give it away. I just I just threw it in the trash because I got it. I was at some event, and this is so cultural. This is so sad. 5th graders. Parents had a pimp and hoe party for 5th graders. Yeah.
Well, I mean, even if you don't know, that's just inappropriate.
Hey, but some people think that was cool,
Oh, my Lord.
And she goes, yeah, my daughter's not attending. Some people get it, but some people are so wrapped up in the culture that they're not looking outside the box to see what that looks like, what harm that can bring, just be aware. We're teaching our kids. They're looking at us.
All the time.
All the time. And that's why I tell parents, and I'll probably say this over and over again, the best advice I can give parents is that you need to have a relationship with your children that they can come and tell you the worst thing in the world that's going on. That's all that really matters. You're going to try to teach them right and wrong. You're going to teach them how to add, how to do different things. But if they can't come to you with the worst thing that's happening to them, it's a problem. It's adding to their vulnerability.
It's got to start young. I know I started that. I have an excellent relationship with all three of my children. But it started even as soon as they started school. Every day they would get home from school, and my husband and I would ask them, how was your day? Tell us something that happened in your day. And you get them used to it. Yeah. And you continue it and continue to reinforce that as they become teenagers, which is really what you're working for.
And you got a reinforcement. So let me ask you this. So when they did tell you something that you really didn't like or you were against, did you react in a harsh way, or did you react?
Never.
Yeah, and that's important.
Never reacted to it. I would always tell them, thank you for sharing and trusting in me, knowing that I have your back and that I'm always going to be on your team. Yeah. Now, let's talk about the part that I didn't like about it, so that we don't repeat this behavior. Exactly. And so that was always the approach. And my husband and I have always had a very good communication with them.
Which is important. And I think the relationship in that manner is more important than, cut the grass. Then I tell you to take out the trash, and this is generational. And when we started getting deeper into talking about trauma, we're going to learn what's that generational trauma looks like. I was raised that way. I'm okay. Are you really? Maybe you think you are, but I don't know.
The rest of us are seeing something else.
You're gonna, so you treat your kids. It's generational. We're passing this on. And, when we start getting more into the family dynamics where all this starts and getting more detailed on what trauma is and how it affects our brain and all of that, and we're going to have some experts come in and talk about that. We're going to revisit that and talk deep, because that's what it's all about. I'll say, and I think I said it in the last show, if the world's a perfect place, every country makes family and children priority. Imagine what the world would look like.
Beautiful.
So now we're going to go into a few indicators of trafficking. There's a whole bunch. And what you have to know about these indicators, it's not just one. It's a combination of many. So if you see one, you're like, Then you see another one, you might be, And you see another one, you might want to make a call.
And you're like,
Yeah. And one of the things that we're trying to do is establish communication. As much as I love the national hotline and the hard work that they do, it's tough to get through, because the more people learn, the more those calls coming in, and it's hard to get through. So, where do you go when you find this? What do you do? That's why it's important to know what's happening in your local area.
Absolutely.
So one thing that we see here, show signs that their movement are being controlled. Somebody got you by the arm, they're pulling you, you can see that, or somebody telling an adult, go sit down, go over there, and they're doing it. That's not, I can imagine if you, Bert, go to your room. Like, okay, what is Bert being trafficked now? You got Bert's ID, you can't go nowhere, I'm jumping the gun.
As crazy as that sounds, it can happen, because Bert is 6'2" and he's built like a football player, so it would be ridiculous. But if you have them grab a hold of their family, then of course you can control someone like that.
Never know. Yeah. Just never know. You run into someone and they go, "Where do you live?" Now, if you were to ask this question to someone, what would you think they're from? Like U.S. or foreign? They don't know their home address or work. Like, what's your home address? Where do you work? Like, okay, do you work? Where? Like, these are obvious stuff. And most of all, we got to trust our gut. Sometimes we see stuff and we know instantly, something ain't right here. And then we start seeing little extra signs like this. Hey, where do you work? I don't know. Where do you live? I don't know. Do you know where you're from? You know, sometimes it's like that. But the key one that I always like asking, the first thing a trafficker is going to take from you is your ID. Why? Because without an ID, you can't get on a bus, you can't get on a plane, you can't get on a train, you can't apply for a job. So everything for you to survive outside of that control is taken away without an ID, unless you just know how to hustle out of that. This is a personal show to me, so I'm going to be personal. So the last video, the first podcast we did, right? I sent it to my mom. My mom had her issues in life, and we're gonna get into that later. It's really deep, but one thing when we talk, she goes, Vic, I didn't know you were really, that's what you were doing. And I go, yeah, Mom, I've been doing this for a long time. I mean, your parents really don't know what you're doing unless they live with you or whatever. And my mom was like, oh my God, this remind me, like, I was dating this guy, and we went to New York with some other friends, and I saw how he was talking to these other girls, and you're gonna pay this and you're gonna do this. And my mom asked the guy, like, hey, what is this? And he tells her, don't worry, you're gonna be doing the same thing, right? But my mom was smart, right? So my mom, and this is how deep these traffickers, they befriend your family members. Like, this trafficker had met my grandmother. He came off as a nice boyfriend, as a cool boyfriend, right? And so what happened, my mom privately called my grandmother to call him and say, hey, your son is really sick and you got to get home now. And that's how she got out of it. He sent her home and she never went back. That's how tricky.
Well, the recruiters can be charming.
Oh yeah.
And that's what people don't understand. Or they're coming up to you and a model, take your pictures, invite you out, do some fancy dancy stuff, get you to fall in love with them, and then they sell you. Yeah,
I mean, these are so many ways this stuff happens that we need to be aware. And that's our last slide. We could go forever talking about this stuff, but again, this is just some awareness, just enough information to make you want to dig a little deeper. Go Google some stuff. Go to one of those things and find out who's being sold in your neighborhood. I hope that this PowerPoint really connects people to what the culture is. You can't recognize it until you do. And the more education you get, you realize, wow, this is nuts. I remember one of the cases that we have, the first case that I got involved with, one of the guys, when I got assigned to the human trafficking unit, this young lady saw something about human trafficking on TV. And she realized, oh my goodness, this is happening to us, because there's like 8 or 9 women in the room. She went up to the attic, called the police. The police came, found that they had a lot of people there that were speaking. They were trafficked from Mexico. And when the police came in, he said, wow, nobody speaks English. So he called Border Patrol. Border Patrol comes in and starts running names and was able to connect the special agent that had the case that, hey, we got these people here. To make this long story short, these women were trafficked for 12 years or more. But when we rescued them, they were still under their control. It took us 8 months of patience until we figured out what was going on before they came clean and said, yes, this is what's happening to me. It just takes control of your mind. And that's what I'm saying. One of our biggest cultural problems that we have in America is judging. We look from the outside and we instantly start thinking who these people are and what they do. There are people that choose to sell themselves, and there are people that choose not to sell themselves. And if they were standing next to each other, how can you tell them apart? You can't, because I can't see the invisible chains of, if I got your mind, I have your body. And that's what we need to know. We need to break outside it just because what we see, we think we know. And the other thing, until you walk in somebody's shoes, who are you to judge? You don't know what they're going through and why they're there. So culture is everything in this realm. It feeds it from A to Z. All about money, all about greed, and culture help feeds that. Anyway, we're going to end here. I want to thank you for joining me today. You really make it, I really like talking to people, and we got some new stuff coming up with the show. I'm enjoying this. This is so much fun, and I can't thank you and Bert enough again for bringing me down to this beautiful location that you guys can do anything here. I mean, people, you got to like Google it, see it. I think we put your information on some of the slides.
Yep, Boa Studios. BoaStudios.com.
Check them out.
Yep.
I mean, you can get a lot of good work done here. And thank you guys again. And until next time, be safe, educate yourselves. And my last question is, now that you know, what are you going to do? Good night.
Good night.